Hey guys, this is Nick. Welcome to Strange Spotting. This picture seems to be gaining traction in the community. It has been shared by big YouTube channels like Classified Captures and Maximum Fear, as well as on various Instagram and TikTok profiles. I try to be thorough with my database, but I'm afraid I have to tell you that I messed up with this one. As far as I can tell, I was the first among the paranormal community members to repost this photo on Instagram about 3 weeks ago, but I forgot to take note of where I found it. And after I did a reverse search for the photo, Google gives me only stuff from a week ago, which means the original poster took it down or I willed it into existence in my dreams. Regardless, I'm very sorry that I can't fully determine the chain of custody. The amount of AI-generated images and videos being presented as possible evidence of cryptids is growing by the day. This, and the fact that many content creators are more focused on entertainment than on research, is muddying the waters to preoccupying levels, and makes it more and more difficult to discriminate between forgery and genuine evidence. But I will keep on trying. This photo attracted me more than many others. The prevailing opinion is that it is silly to even think it could not be anything more than AI, so I guess I must be silly. In the last weeks, I was confronted with a similar situation to the Bigfoot mugshot video, the unshakable idea that this is either the real thing or one of the best photographic hoaxes I've come across in a long time, and therefore it deserves more attention than others. Plus, examining hoaxes helps sharpening our critical skills. So, while keeping in mind that I have zero background info on this image regarding who took it, where and why, let's begin our analysis. In this particular case, I will talk probabilities only after I've established the most proper hypothesis. What does this image tell us? Well, it depicts an animal standing in a camping base between two tents, looking directly into the camera. If this is AI, there's no need to worry about why the camera is where it is and why it snapped this photo. But if this is not AI, then the most likely scenario is that someone purposely set up a motion-sensitive camera to take photos of possible animals roaming in their camp, attracted by the smell of food. Was the person who set up the camera expecting anomalous creatures to show up? Possibly, but we'll never know for sure. The first logical step is to look at this image as if it were a real photographic shot taken with a real camera and try to determine what this subject is or is not. Many have claimed this to be simply a bear, and the fact that some would jump to that conclusion means I'm not the only one who has an instinctive impression about this being a real shot and not AI. But nevertheless, this subject presents, taxonomically speaking, features pertaining 100% to the carnivore order and to either the Ursidae or Canide family. So let's take a brightened up version and compare it to a black bear first, and then to a wolf. I looked for pictures where the animals are in a similar position vis-a-vis the camera. What differences do you notice with the black bear? I noticed mainly 5. 1. The muzzle coloration, which is always, with no exception, of a lighter and different shade than the rest of the body in bears. 2. The eyes of a bear are smaller in proportion. 3. The ears. Bears have rounded ears, not pointy. 4. The skeletal morphology of the head. Bears have a head position lower in relation to back and shoulders than this guy, because they are primarily quadrupedal. 5. Thorax and shoulders. This guy has a larger thorax and larger shoulders, which is something only primates possess among mammals, at least that we know of. These differences are far more than enough to categorically reject the idea that this could be a bear. As for wolves, the same points regarding the head position and the thorax and shoulders width are valid, but the latter is even more significant. From an evolutionary standpoint, the more an animal uses its front paws for functions other than deambulation, the larger the thorax and shoulders have to be. Wolves have far less use for their front paws than bears and have a much narrower structure. The other glaring difference is how large this guy's front arms are, because that's what they are, arms, in comparison to the wolf. The idea that this could be a wolf must also be categorically rejected. So, if this is not a known animal, what could it be? We're left with three possibilities. A. This is an AI-generated image. B. This is a well-crafted hoax involving a man in a werewolf costume. C. This is an unknown, unrecognized animal within the canide family, which developed a mainly bipedal posture and prehensile hands, thanks to a process of convergent evolution. Convergent with higher primates, that is. So let's assign probabilities to our three options. For anyone for whom this video is the first foray into strange spotting and my method, I must preface the fact that after analyzing two different videos pertaining possible dogmen and after listening to hundreds of eyewitness reports, I have sufficient rational and objective basis to consider this scripted a reality. Someone who's never spent time and effort in examining this phenomenon in depth could argue that I should assign zero probability to option C because Dogman doesn't exist. But that's not my position, so here it goes. 45% AI, 45% costume, and 10% humanoid canine. Let's investigate the first option. AI-generated video and images are constantly improving, but at the moment, there are still ways to figure out if an image was created by artificial intelligence or not. The first important detail is that an AI-generated Dogman image would probably be shared online and then get picked up by people who can tell the difference and who spread it around as possible evidence. But that would make it possible to find it with a reverse image search on Google, and as I said at the beginning, I didn't find anything beside the paranormal channels, and almost all of them have a cropped version, not the original. The second aspect would be the metadata, but nope. The image in my database has no metadata associated, and that could be due to a mishandling on my part, such as a screenshot of the original, but that wouldn't explain why the original can't be found online. So I see the scenario of the original poster wanting to stay anonymous by leaving no metadata and later taking the image off the web as more plausible. The next step is to analyze the finer details. My personal checklist is as follows. 1. Unusual or inconsistent details. I don't see any of those, beside of course an unknown creature. Lighting and shadows. AI images often contain inconsistencies in terms of lighting. Inconsistency is not the same thing as bad lighting, mind you. This photo has bad lighting, but realistic and consistent with an early evening or early morning setting. Background anomalies. The background is neither too detailed or too simple. It presents a convincing mix of highly detailed and complex areas and simple surfaces. It is realistic background for a campsite with trees at varying distances, a normal-looking tent with very normal creases on its surface, and some messy-looking bags and containers on the ground. Texture and pattern repetitions. I looked very carefully, but I didn't notice any, and patterns are normally very easy to spot because our brains evolved exactly for that. Digital artifacts. This pertains to signs of digital manipulation like pixelation, blurs, and strange colors. I observed it intensively, and I couldn't find any of those things. Contextual errors. This pertains to wrong scale or out of place objects. Since AI still struggles with context, once again, I couldn't find anything. The checks regarding text, overly smooth faces, weird hands, and emotional inconsistencies in the faces don't apply here, obviously. There are quite a few things regarding more specific photographic aspects to look for. First of all, in most cases, AI software is trained with professionally produced photos and illustrations, particularly in terms of composition, lighting, and sharpness. This image does not look professional at all. It is composition-wise mediocre at best, with bad lighting, and it's not sharp at all. Two glaring aspects in conflict with the AI hypothesis are the visible low-light noise in the foliage, which is never seen in images created with artificial intelligence, and the different focus for different levels. Look at how the leaves here are less sharp than the subject, which was the point of focus, and the background is sharper than the leaves but less than the subject. AI cannot produce these effects at the moment. The last details worth mentioning are the fact that this image in my possession has a resolution of 2556 by 1442 pixels. AI software output works in increment of 64 pixels, and a telltale sign could be such a multiple in resolution, but this is not the case here. The only detail that could point to AI is this file being a PNG format, which is a typical output file for AI software, but not a typical choice for photography. But I personally often export in PNG because of its higher quality compared to the JPEG format, and a trail cam photo is not exactly professional photography. To sum it up, we have no significant telltale signs of artificial intelligence. I cannot rule it out with absolute certainty, but I think the probabilities are next to zero. We're left with 98% probability to be split between costume and unknown creature. I cannot resort to the usual morphological and anthropometric analysis because the subject limbs are partially hidden, and look at the facial features is relevant because this could be easily a mask. There's one aspect that, in my opinion, makes this most likely not a man in a costume. I think we can all agree that in this frame there are two tents. One is in the front of the subject, who towers above the black portion of the tent used for entrance, and is most likely taller than the light-colored dome while on all fours. A man wearing a costume and standing on all fours can't be taller than 3 feet. For instance, when I analyzed the Hellhound clip, I made this graphic to show that my shoulders are at 2.66 feet from the ground when on all fours, and my head is certainly no more than 3 feet from the ground. This tent must be at least 4 feet, more likely 5, from the ground, because the entrance is at least 3 feet for a person to be able to enter. This means our subject's head is at 5 feet or more from the ground, and this is impossible for a human being unless resting on some kind of elevation hidden from view. The other thing I find very anomalous, but that I can't prove conclusively, is that the upper part of the body seems to be much higher than the lower portion, or pelvis area, even more than a man crouched on hands and knees, suggesting that this guy's arms are much longer than human arms in proportion to the legs. These two aspects, chiefly the height observation, lead me to consider the humanoid canide hypothesis as the most plausible. I cannot say that this is 100% a Dogman, but after this analysis I consider the Dogman caught on camera in the campsite photo as a very plausible and very compelling evidence of an unknown, unrecognized species of upright walking canide. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please keep in mind that I've changed email address. Now you can write to me for any request at strangespotting@yahoo.com. If Dogman is a cryptid that interests you, I suggest watching this video analysis of mine of the Kentucky Hellhound clip right here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.